Welcome back to the Good Green Home Show with Rich and Shawna. Today, our guest is all about the water smarts. It's Ed Beaulieu from Aquascapes. Welcome, Ed. We're so glad to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is going to be great.
Ed, thank you for being here. And Ed is not just from Aquascapes, but he's also from the hit reality show Pond Stars on Nat Geo Wild. How wild is that?
Yeah, you are a TV superstar, my friend.
It's awesome. It's been a great time filming. I've been having a lot of fun, and we've been doing some awesome projects.
Well, terrific. Are you going to have, well, since we're talking about the Pond Stars, will you have another season next year? When does the shooting for that begin?
Right now, we're not going to be back with Nat Geo Wild. We are currently looking for some other networks. So our manager is out hitting the street right now as we speak. So he said January and February are the times where they're actually looking for new programs. So we're looking for some other networks out there, and we're going to see what happens.
That's great. You can come to my house and film pond everything. I've got it all planned.
She'll probably entice you with some of these cocktails we make on this show as well.
I know. Now listen, Ed, the truth about you is that you're very special. You have a unique degree in water knowledge. Tell us more about what your background is and how you got involved in doing the ponds and saving the environment, really.
Sure. Well, my degree is actually in zoology, which is a really broad category. So it's basically the animal world. So I specialize within that. So I actually specialize in limnology, which is the study of freshwater ecosystems. And then with that, it's opened up so many doors for me. I actually worked as an environmental chemist before coming to Aquascape.
Wow.
And then once I got hooked up with Aquascape, I really fell in love with it. And that's because they had a really unique philosophy, and that philosophy is very simple. It's work with Mother Nature, not against her. So everything that we do is based on natural, real-world ecosystems.
Well, you've done it right in my front lawn because I have a rainwater cistern, and that rainwater cistern is 500 gallons of water. It's under the ground, and it does have a decorative element to it because there's a water feature on the top, but ultimately it takes water off of my roof and then creates a water feature for me.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. So that has been a huge item for us. So the rainwater capture, as you know, Sean, I'm preaching to the choir here, that, water in our environment is the most precious resource. So we can't last more than a couple days without a fresh source of water. So by capturing rainwater, we're alleviating some of the stresses that are on our municipal water supplies. And on top of that, we're cutting back on stormwater runoff, which is a huge problem in lakes, rivers, and streams throughout North America.
Absolutely. And now, Ed, I'm not sure if you know this, but I own a couple of garden centers, and we sell Aquascape products at Alsip Nursery. We also sell a lot to landscape supply to contractors, and we have a contractor, South County Landscaping, who does specializes, Doug Mulchan. He specializes in waterscaping, and he's a huge proponent of the Aquascape brand. At our St. John, Indiana store, we actually have 3 water feature displays in the store, and they're using Aquascape pumps and some other accessories in them. And one of them is actually 2 of them are this way. One's indoor, and the other one is outdoor, that are pondless waterfalls and water features. Can you tell the listeners and viewers what is a pondless waterfall, and what are the good key components behind that? And why would you do a pondless?
Absolutely. So speaking of the pondless system, so I was actually the inventor of the pondless system. So
I did not expect that. That's what a great response.
Yeah.
You're the inventor of the pondless water feature. Okay.
So I can tell you a heck of a lot more, probably more than you ever want to know about it.
Sure.
So it was created, I'm going to say 2003 was the initial creation. And basically what it is, it's a way to have the sights and sound of a water feature, but without actually having the big pond or anything like that. So it's the waterfalls and the streams and everything cascades, and it goes underground into an underground reservoir. The nice thing about this is it really cuts down on your maintenance. So you don't really have to worry about water quality. You don't have to worry about keeping fish and things like that if you desire. The other nice thing about it is you could actually connect it to a downspout, or you can connect it to a roof of some sort, and you could actually capture that runoff coming off, and it will fill that underground reservoir, and then you have a free source of water coming into it. So the Pondless features are great for front yards. They're great for people that are looking for low maintenance situations. They're great in public locations because you don't have any liabilities or anything like that.
That's why I like it in my garden center, because I'm worried about someone falling in.
Oh no. Yeah.
And that alleviates that concern.
But you're right about that. My rainwater cistern is essentially a pondless system, where it has, so it's all the water is underground, and then it has a super cool fountain on the top. So the fountain is really attractive, and the fountain looks like it's stone, but it's made from 100% post-consumer recycled products. So it is also, good for the environment. And then let's say we're in the middle of a heavy drought and I've run out of water, and every source I can find, I can actually pump water out of that rainwater cistern and then water my vegetable garden with it. So it is a genius. Look at you being a genius, Ed, coming up with this. It's such a smart
brilliant
idea.
And I genuinely did not know that you were the inventor of Pondless water features. When I kind of walked right into that. I mean, absolutely, I did not know that.
That's great.
So
it's not common knowledge. So unless you're really, really into the industry, you probably won't know that. So it's not like a thing that we talk about all the time. It's just one of those things.
Can you tell the listeners and viewers what it is about the sound of water that calms people down or just creates this tranquil feeling? What is it about the sound of water?
You know what? There's a bunch of things that have been happening with that. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about science behind it. So my background being in science, I love looking into things and trying to figure out why things work and how they work and things like that. So what they've done, there's actually been several scientific studies talking about not necessarily the sound of water. I guess that's part of it, but it's actually, as that water cascades over the rocks, it releases negative ions into the air. So I'm not sure if you've seen these things for sale. I mean, you could actually go buy like an ion generator and things like that. And negative ions actually have a calming effect. So it increases oxygen uptake into our brain. It calms the nerves. It lowers your heartbeat. So this is a scientific fact. And it comes from going along the coastline. It comes from being by Niagara Falls, by waterfalls. People flock to these locations, and it's not because of the beauty. I know that's part of it, but it's actually because there's a high amount of these ions being released where this water is crashing and tumbling around and stuff like that, and it creates a calming effect. And people always say they sleep better, they feel more relaxed, and it's a combination of factors, but there is actually a little bit of science behind it.
Wow. Okay, we're learning a lot, as we always do on this show. My mind is a little bit blown. I got to admit that I knew there was some science behind it, but I didn't know about the negative ions and how that actually worked. So pretty much the sound of running water on rocks is good for you.
Well,
absolutely.
And for me, I am an asthma sufferer. And what I found is if I'm near the pond, and I mean, I'm talking really near, like I'm sitting right next to my water feature, my asthma symptoms, particularly in the hot, dry summer, are significantly relieved. And I think part of that is about the moisture in the air, what you're breathing in, and the dust, because it keeps dust down around the garden area where it is. I just love it. I think it's a great tool to have in the garden. I think of it as a tool because it definitely helps me in many, many ways beyond beautification.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? I've been doing a lot of these pondless features and pond features for hospitals and wellness centers and cancer facilities, and that's because of these calming effects. So healing gardens right now are a huge business when we look at the healthcare industry. So a healing garden, basically, it's a small, typically a courtyard type of a feature. You're going to have seating areas. You're going to have different types of plant material, trying to create the soothing environment. But usually in every well-designed healing garden, there's going to be a water feature there. And it's because it's going to fill that space with the sound of crashing water. Those negative ions are going to be released into the air. It's going to help increase the air quality of the area. And all these things are very, very important, not just for us, but for for people that have illnesses and sicknesses and things like that. So this is all really, really important in today's world, especially with our hectic lives that we're all living.
Well, I'm all jacked up to go put in a healing garden at my house now. I mean, I've got this going on at work, but I'm running back and forth, and I rarely take the time to smell the proverbial roses, so to speak, and sit there and enjoy these water features. But
that's a good point, actually, smelling the roses, because as part of the therapeutic garden, like what I have around this Pondless Waterfall, essentially what I have in my front garden, I have herbs all surrounding it. So the scent, when I walk out my front door, it just smacks me in the face. It's incredibly yummy. It is definitely therapeutic in nature. So I suggest that the people at home go out, if they're going to get a pondless system or a rainwater cistern or something like that, or build a pond, that they consider the plants that they plant around the garden as well. Now, Ed, I wanted to ask you also about plants that you would recommend that are easy for new ponders, the new people who are maybe installing a small pond, who want to try some plants that float in the water. What would you recommend?
Some of the easiest plants that I feel, thankfully, aquatic plants are real easy to take care of because they're in the water. So you don't have to worry about overwatering them, underwatering them. You put them in the water. As long as they stay saturated, you're in great shape. So they're super robust, very easy to take care of. Some of my favorites, for starting out are going to be the wide variety of water lilies. You can't go wrong with the water lilies. You're going to put them in water that's anywhere from 12 to 18 inches deep. What that's going to do, it's going to allow the lily pads are going to float on the surface. What's neat about water lilies, they're one of the few perennial plants that will actually start blooming in Memorial Day, and they're going to bloom all the way until late October. So to have that type of a time span is unbelievable.
You have water lilies, Shawna?
I don't have water lilies because I'm pondless, meaning I don't have any water for them to float on.
Right.
And I do love ponds, and that's one of my next goals is to see if we can get a pond installed sometime soon. But what I've noticed is that just because you have a pondless system or a rainwater system doesn't mean that the plants surrounding it are going to get more water, right? Because it's separate from your garden. Correct. And so I think the mistaken thought is that around that system is going to be wetter.
It's
it
contained.
Really isn't. Yeah, it's very contained. And I actually have planted drought tolerant plants around most of the pondless system I have. And then we use herbs as a way to make it more of a therapeutic garden.
That makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, that is one of the common misperceptions, I guess, about some of the features. And that's because when we're designing and building these decorative style water features, we have a rubber liner in place. So it's an impermeable membrane that's going to keep the water contained in that certain area so you don't get that water infiltration into the surrounding soils. So you really have to be conscious of that. One of the things that I do when I'm designing, I'll create little pockets along the side. So when I'm designing my water feature, I'm going to put in big boulders, kind of a little bit more. I'm going to have like a shelf coming out. There's going to be a boulder, and then I'm going to backfill behind that boulder and in between the rubber liner with just like a fine gravel mixture or an aquatic plant soil. When you do that, you could put in irises, you could put in pickerel rush, you can put in a whole host of bulrushes and reeds and things like that, and they're all just going to take off. One of my favorites in early springtime here in the Midwest is going to be the Caltha palustris, which is a marsh marigold. So
that is a mouthful. How do you pronounce that again?
Caltha palustris.
All right.
Now, it's a marsh marigold. It has a vibrant yellow flower, and it blooms literally right when the snow is melting. So in early March, you're going to have flowers on this. It's awesome.
Ed, I want to ask you a little bit more about the wildlife aspect. Now, we're not talking about a pond list, but an actual pond feature. Obviously, those fish. One of our display ponds at our garden center at Alsip Nursery, we do have an actual pond, and we have fish in there. And I've noticed we have frogs having babies, tadpoles. We also have a turtle family.
I love that. We have frogs having babies. All right.
Yeah, and there's turtles, and you want to, I don't know if you could probably expand on that or maybe even tell some stories from some of your past experiences. But I tell you what, wildlife is attracted to this pond.
Well, water is, we talked about it right in the very beginning. Water is the most important resource on the entire planet. Everything needs water in one way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So by putting in a water feature, it becomes a magnet for wildlife. So if you're a nature lover, there is nothing like having a water feature in your backyard or front yard or wherever, because things are going to be drawn to it. And some of those things that are getting drawn to it, I think when, we talked a little bit about the sound of water earlier, birds are actually drawn in by the sound of water. So it's that crashing water, and that's because streams and rivers are typically going to have better water quality than a stagnant pool of water. So whenever there's that trickling motion, whenever there's that sound of water crashing over rocks and things, birds are going to be attracted to it. And, birding is one of the biggest hobbies here in North America. Bird lovers and bird watchers, I mean, it's a huge industry, from putting out bird feeders and attracting wildlife and taking even exotic trips around the world where you're going to view these animals, but you could actually do it right in your backyard. And it's really, really unbelievable.
Even robins have a thing for the system itself. Like the robins come and take bird baths in top of my waterfall, and it's really fun. So I agree with you. We get a lot of birds in because of this. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. It's great. Birds are just a few of the animals, and hundreds of different species, of thousands, depending upon where you live. But you're also going to get all types of small amphibians. I've seen frogs and toads, which are both great for the environment. So they're an important part of the food chain. So they're going to feed off of insects and things like that. I mean, toads are great to have in any type of a garden setting. I have had some turtles come into my personal backyard, and actually they laid eggs. Kind of underneath a bunch of spruce trees that I had on the property. It was really, really amazing for my kids to see this happening. Oh, it's just awesome.
Yeah, we had the same thing. We had turtles lay eggs at our pond in our store, and we were kind of mind blown that actually had happened. And I actually took my kids fishing a couple years ago, and my daughter caught a little, I don't know if you painted turtle or red-eared slider. And we released that one turtle. I brought it to work. We released it into the pond, and then following year we found eggs. So we're thinking somehow naturally another one came along.
Sure.
And they had I'm like, it was cool. And everybody, at work, we kind of stopped. We're like, oh, this is so cool. Put a picture on Facebook. So.
Well, Ed, what are some other ways that people can take advantage of the water system, both to water their gardens, to do things that are healthy and natural for the environment? Do you have some suggestions beyond just a standard pond?
Sure. Some of the easy stuff to do, having a rain barrel, taking water off of your roof is a great way to do it. Rain gardens are very, very popular. And these are basically excavated areas, take out some of the heavy clay that we have, put in a mixture of sand and basically just topsoil into the ground, 12 to 18 inches deep. You could plant it up with a variety of marsh type plants and reroute some of the drainage into those areas. These are great places for wildlife to be attracted to. One of the things I think that's popping into my head right now is it's not just any type of rainwater capture system. The water that you're gonna use is much better for your plant material. So I did a simple test many years ago, and I took two plants, two annuals basically, and one of them was in typical soil. They were both actually, let me rephrase that. Both of them in the same exact soil, right next to each other. One of them was watered with rainwater. The other was watered with city tap water. The one that was watered with the rainwater just exploded with growth. And that's because rainwater is very soft water. It has dissolved nitrogen in the water, which is basically a food source for your plants.
Absolutely.
But the most important part is it didn't have chlorine in the water. So the chlorinated water that we typically use that comes out of our taps, it kills. The thing about chlorine, the good thing about chlorine, I have a glass of drinking water here. It kills off, bacteria and microbes that could actually be harmful for us. But it also kills off bacteria and microbes in the soil layer. So that top layer of soil is very, very important. So when you're putting chlorinated water on that, it's killing off those microbes, which are important for breaking down all the organic materials in your soil. And actually, that's where the plant health comes from.
Well, Ed Beaulieu with Aquascapes and Pond Stars on your television, and this has been a very informative interview.
Is your lawn being ruined by moles and voles? Bonide has the solution. Bonide Mole Max is an effective repellent to use against moles, voles, rabbits, gophers, groundhogs, squirrels, skunks, and other burrowing animals. The environmentally friendly Mole Max formulation makes it a great product to apply in areas where children and pets play. Just apply 3 or 4 times per year to send nuisance animal pests away. If your lawn needs some repair from mold damage, use Mole Max RX with Lawn Revitalizer. This will help repair your lawn while repelling the moles and voles. Bonide's Mole Max and Mole Max RX are available in a granule and easy spreader application or in a convenient 5-pound shaker applicator for flower or vegetable gardens. Bonide products are family made in America. Bonide Mole Max Mole and Vole Repellent is available at your local hardware store, garden center, or farm feed store, or go to bonide.com for a retailer near you. This product is not for sale in Indiana.
Alsip Home and Nursery. Think outside the box store.